Never a doubt. I'm Dave. Thanks for coming. I apologize and I congratulate you on being here because this is how I didn't I marry you without shoes? This is my dear friend Amy. I married you. That was that my first wedding? My first wedding. Part of my story is right before I moved to Spain, I married Amy and Brian outside of Chico Hot Springs. And we met at summer camp. So if you're lucky, maybe we'll sing some camp songs later. This is how it's going to go. We're going to go down some rabbit holes. This is 3 years in the making. It's fitting when I say buckle up because you're in for a ride. It's going to get weird. So the deal is I bought a van. I drove to the end of South America and back up through Chile a bit. I sold the van. I built a website. I wrote a book. And thanks for coming. No. Obviously, this thing is called Roadtrip by me, David Overturf. And it's worth noting that it is volume 1 of Project 1000, which we'll get into here. This book at once chronicles my journey of 16 months. 25,000 miles from Billings to the end of South America. Ushuaia is the southernmost point. That's Argentina. There's a place called Puerto Williams, Chile, that is upset about that because technically they're farther south. So there's a little combat there. They're okay. But there's not much of. I don't think there's much of a civilization at Puerto Williams, Chile. Julie? So it's Meditations on a 25,000-mile road trip, Introduction to Project 1000. This is how the book opens. I thought this is intentional, and I think it speaks to this. So this is the maiden voyage / output of Project 1000, a movement, a community, a resource, and an outreach program centered around the notion that a picture is worth 1,000 words, except for the preface, the acknowledgments, and resources at the end of the book. All entries are presented using this same ratio, 1 picture to 1,000 words. Simple, but I've kind of blown up this idea of simplicity and interconnected it. In the spirit of Project 1000, these are not necessarily the best images of the road trip, nor do they tell all of the stories of the entire journey. I long battled mightily towards this want, feeling obliged to include all places, all people, all moments. Finally, I surrendered to the impossibility of this. The only way to finish the book was to realize it would never be perfect, all-encompassing. It could never be everything. In the end, I chose to tell some stories in the spirit of this website / community, which was largely conceived during this very journey. There's a page on the website in the About section called FAQ. Not really questions, just kind of hints and philosophy of the website. As the website FAQ states, this is neither a photography nor a writing competition. You don't have to have a camera. Your pictures don't have to be perfect, and your writing doesn't have to be eloquent. What we are after are real stories about real pictures taken by real people. There need not be perfect lighting, nor should there be fiction. These are actual memories, accounts, estimations, alterations, and the like. We hope this is the first of many collections published under the auspices of Project 1000, a great resource and outlet for writers, photographers, readers, educators, community groups, and social justice causes. There could be collections for the best of 2022, 2023, the best of students, the best of the theme of memory or the theme of family or anything like that. There's all these interconnected tags and whatnot within the system here that kind of connects these things, and you can gather submissions, which is a picture in 1,000 words by all these different things, be it submission, location. You have the best of Montana, pictures that were taken in Montana, the best of whatever, Colorado, etc. So these are my first thoughts. During my road trip, I got pretty tired of selfies. Other people taking selfies. I don't know why I always go to Machu Picchu, but it's like you want to take a picture of yourself at Machu Picchu. I'm like, do you? And I was probably projecting because I had to answer this early on. You know, do I want to travel and experience this, or do I want to communicate this and be seen traveling? And I have enough of an ego that wanted to didn't want to do that. I didn't want to be beholden to constant blogs or updates or anything like that. I wanted to be in the place I was when I was there as much as I could. So I ended up coming back with 150,000 words of notes. So I'm an active child. It was good. And then I took, 28,000 pictures and 4,000 videos. So I came back with some content, but it was kind of the right way to do it, I think, to just be where I was. So it's almost an anti-selfie website. It's definitely an anti-Instagram website where it's just this scrolling, this thing where we just next images. I have a promotional video for educators that says we are drowning in images, and I think that's true. That we see how many hundreds, maybe thousands of images per day do we see, and this has been hard. I launched about Easter 2019 the website for initial users and stuff like that, and I think there's 35 submissions so far. So it does ask. It's only 1,000 words, but it's 1,000 words, and it's like concentrating, like sitting down, writing, but I think it's worth it. I think, this movement is kind of about slowing down and stopping and attaching meaning to these, giving context to pictures. So I'm going to be the first one that does this, and this is where I need the timer because this is going to say a little bit. All right, so I'm going to start this story. Right across the river, and this is a good time to do this because we said bon voyage. I mean, I don't even know what it was yesterday. It was a party. It was a salute to one of our professors. This is Julie Ray O'Connor, who was a classmate of mine at the University of Montana, where I was there from 91 to 94. And we had a professor named Randy Bolton, Dr. Randy Bolton. He passed away on December 30th of last year, and we finally just had his memorial service yesterday. So I wanted to coincide this as a salute to him, and I need to do this, and maybe just for Julie, but hara! He wanted her feet on the ground, into he was the barbaric yop guy. I mean, he was a Walt Whitman and a lunatic. And I learned a lot of things in college there, and I did study acting. Shocking, but so I learned a couple things. I learned, and it was said yesterday that he didn't show you how to be an artist or tell you that you were one. He let you discover that you were already one. And that was my experience, and it gives me chills. And that's why I finally confronted what was for me pretty active alcoholism. I had tried to stop a couple times, couldn't do it. When I drank, I couldn't control the amount I took. When I stopped, I couldn't stay stopped for long. And I was pretty miserable when I was, and it was 30 days. And so I moved to Billings. I went to, moved, it sounds so casual. My mom bought me a flight to go from Missoula to Billings to go to treatment at Rimrock Foundation, where I spent my first 2 years of sobriety. Towards the end of that sobriety, towards the end of my first 2 years of sobriety, I should say, I was doing student teaching at Billings West High School in Spanish and drama. And a local theater company guy, these are all blasts from the past. Sam Brown was taught by this guy, Mace Archer. He was the director of Venture Theater, and he said, "You want to premiere a play here? Take it back to our sister theater in Chicago." And I thought that sounded pretty good because I learned to teach from a really good teacher. And teaching didn't seem like anything I wanted to do because it was really hard and a lot of prep, and especially with the foreign language, a lot of stuff, a lot of busy work corrections and posters and how do I do this. So I moved to Chicago in 97, I was really into, I fell in love. We went there, we recast the play, re-rehearsed the play, and it was during Michael Jordan's second three-peat run with the Chicago Bulls. And I got a straight razor shave for the play under the L, and there was open mics and poetry slams at the Green Mill, which is where it started on North Sheridan in Chicago, which is a place where Al Capone used to go. So I fell in love with Chicago, and I was going to go there for like 6 weeks to do a play, and I ended up staying for 2.5 years. I was a substitute teacher in the Chicago Public Schools, which is a whole nother book maybe, at least a couple thousand there. The book kind of opens with a story from that. And I when I was in Chicago, I would come back to Montana. I chaperoned a bunch of kids that went from Billings to the Pacific Lutheran University in Tacoma, Washington, as a United Church of Christ. I was a chaperone. Let's just don't think about that for a second. I was a chaperone for kids, and I had an afro at the time. You remember afros. So I went out there and we met these people from Costa Rica, and these 3 people from a sister church in Costa Rica came up, and when I was in Chicago, I didn't want to teach so much that I started looking up in 1997 the requirements. This is pre or beginnings of internet. The requirements for visas and insurance for driving to South America. That was 1997. So we met these people from Costa Rica. I ended up going down there, being a chaperone, and they came back 2 weeks later, and I stayed for a year. We had it planned. I didn't ditch them at the airport or anything, but I stayed behind. I lived there for a year in Costa Rica. Ended up tutoring, met this American family, had this girl. They had these friends who moved down from Boston that rented cell phones. I was making pretty good money. Renting cell phones in Costa Rica, so much so that one day I got a knock at the door from the immigration department. Almost got deported. Had to go to Nicaragua for 3 days. Anyway, had a friend come down and visit me. This is all context to pictures, right? So this is kind of what it's all about. It's like, this would never fit in 1,000 words, clearly. But it's about what all comes into a picture, what happened way before it. And it's not just the picture of this thing right here. I mean, I could tell... how many stories do I have here? You know, I got Amy and Casey and Julie and Joe and Sam, Andrew, and all these people. There's stories in here. So I had a friend come down and visit me in Costa Rica, and she invited me to come check out Brooklyn. I thought that sounded like a good idea. So Mom came home. Mom took a job in Cleveland, Ohio, the year 2000, and so we moved her out of the house, and I took a little road trip to New York City. But I went to New York from Billings. I went to Yellowstone and Grand Teton National Park and Salt Lake City and Las Vegas and Los Angeles and Tucson and Albuquerque and Santa Fe and Little Rock and Oklahoma City and Memphis and New Orleans and Birmingham and Atlanta and the Blue Ridge Highway up to Lynchburg, Virginia, and then back over to Chicago and Cleveland. And it was a cute little road trip. I mean, it was 8,000 miles. And I arrived at Game 3 of the World Series in 2000. Lived for a while in a closet in Brooklyn. Stayed for a while at our buddy Matt Ayatt's couch in Queens for 2 months. I made stuff so weird there that his roommate freaked out and threw a bowl of popcorn all over the living room. It's in the book. I tutored a kid while I was in while I was in New York City. He was from Barcelona, and I helped him, because of my teaching credentials, I helped him get a 3-year student visa. And his mother was appreciative. I think she came to visit after 9/11. I was in the Bronx when that happened, which was of all the time that I could have been in New York City, that was it for me. So she came and visited, was appreciative, and said, you know, if you ever want to come check out Spain, come do that. And I was like, oh. You're messing with the wrong sandwich, as they say. No one says that. So that was a little much, 9/11. So I came home, chilled out a little bit, and then I was all set to go to Spain. And my friend Amy called me and said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm going to Spain." She goes, "Cool. Want to marry me and my husband first?" I said, "Yeah, I do." So I changed my ticket or whatever, and then I moved to Spain. And as I was in Spain, back to Costa Rica for a second. I didn't even have a camera. I had one of those 35 millimeter autos or whatever, the little square things, and I have like a roll of film that I found. But really, what I did down there was write. I wrote 250 8.5 by 11 pages, and it was like this of poetry, short story, and especially nonfiction thing, which would come into play here quickly. And so, fast forward a couple years in Spain, I had gotten a digital camera when I was in New York City. And when I was in Spain, my father was an architect, so his voice was in my head all the time, and shut up, enough. But it registered, So when I was in Spain, there was this beautiful architecture in this old, the cobblestone streets and the cathedrals and the lighting and the Gothic, Barrio Gótico and these places of Spain that I didn't have a language for. I could have a mood, and maybe I just was lazy, but that's that was kind of the thing, that it was much easier for me to take pictures of stuff and not write about it. I had a former professor come into Madrid. He was leading educational tours at the time. So I scrambled and put this thing together. That was called Project 1000 in 2002. That was a semester abroad program where we'd take students to whatever, hopefully a Latin American Spanish-speaking country or whatever. So we could do some language stuff or whatever their subjects were here. You could do a history thing or whatever, international studies. They could do independent studies. Come back to the States for the last couple weeks of a semester, and they would owe me 10 pictures. And each one of those pictures had to have 1,000 words. So they could not go to a place and just take pictures. They had to remember the smell and register it and be present. That thing did not fly with his touring company because, I don't know, and whatever. So I came back to Billings and I started selling these. Before I left, I took a train trip through France and Germany and Holland, England, Ireland, Sweden, Italy, and Greece. Came back with like 10,000 pictures, and people were like, you should do this. Like, you should sell these. And, friends, I was a sucker to friends and family. I think they hornswoggled me. And they started buying stuff, and then I thought, well, I can do this. And I put up lights in my living room, and then all of a sudden I was renting a studio, and then I got some help from my mother and father for a down payment, and got a loan from the city of Billings to buy this cool building on Montana Avenue in Billings. So it was my photography studio and art gallery, and I did that for about 10 or 15 years. But this notion I'd write about it every once in a while. I hate photography, man. It's just, I really wanted to get back to this. I'm more, it still seemed kind of lazy or whatever. I wanted to engage with the words and, taking pictures of weddings and stuff. I made them, personal to me. I shot them the way I wanted to, but it always kind of haunted me. And then finally, I'd periodically put up for sale signs, for lease signs in the windows. And finally, after years of tire kickers, there was a couple guys in 2016 that seemed for real. And so in 2016, they ended up buying that building from me. I paid off Mom, paid off Dad. I bought a 2005 Dodge Grand Caravan. Took it to my buddy Jim Riggio in Billings, guy from Philadelphia who was just about to interview Jimmy Hoffa, but he was a couple days late. I mean, there are stories, so many stories, man. Anyway, this guy built this plank. I designed the back platform and the storage thing underneath, the bed on top. Measured out the headroom. My mom and aunt and I tried to make curtains in the middle of November in Billings in the garage. We were measuring out. My mom's a really good seamstress. And so we're measuring out the windows, and she's cutting these things and serging the ends and putting buttonholes in it for these things. It never worked. I mean, we took so much time, but yeah, I took off of December 15, 2016. Stayed with my brother in Salt Lake, my father in Las Vegas. My friend Matt, my former roommate, stayed with him in Los Angeles, second to last stop. Stayed with the friend that I hadn't seen since I graduated from high school. Shout out to Jeff Pepis and his girlfriend Cindy, who have put me up. I haven't seen Jeff since college across the way. That's where I'm staying in Victor. Lovely drive, by the way. So yeah, I drove through 15 countries. Started in Mexico, went to Belize, then Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, Nicaragua, and that's about where this video will kick in here. I made 3 videos along the way. I made one at 6 months as I camped out. I needed a break at 6 months. Thousands of miles down the road, my head was completely maxed out. My hard drive was full, whatever the random access or whatever. Hard drive was full. I needed to stop and clear the cache. So I rented an apartment in Granada, Nicaragua for 30 days. I decided to, this was a guy I met in Belize. So his name was Mark, and that's the first one I'm going to read. So that's kind of the context of catching you up to date here with me, and that's kind of how the book starts, is an introduction to me, and it's a lot. some good stuff in here. All right, this is Mark. So this is also how there's a thing called sessions. Sessions are Project 1000 that reaches out and into the community and hopefully partners with schools or districts, colleges, or social justice groups or whatever, and kind of leads an accountability writing group. This is kind of what it would be like, or really, I was thinking about Randy, our professor over there, who never told us. He gave us more assignments than he would give us an assignment and nothing else, and we just had to figure it out. And the learning was on us, and that's really what sessions are about. But the end of sessions, there's a presentation, because with my background, there's got to be some presentation. I think people need. Everybody needs to shine, and so I think at the end of these 4 to 6 week sessions or whatever, there's a reading, and in that reading there will be their picture projected behind them, and they will read their 1,000 words in front of teachers, parents, friends, whatever community. And we could do, if there's enough of a community, we don't need a session. We could just do a reading in a town or whatever. We get enough people to write 1,000 words. Looking at you, Joe, Sam, anyone else in here, and we could do a little jam session. This is Mark. After 4 days with friends in Playa del Carmen, Trevor flew down to Cancun, and we spent a few nights off the coast on Isla Mujeres and a few more on Cay Caulker, Belize. I hadn't seen Trev since just after high school, and yet he was one who had reached out when I announced my upcoming road trip on social media now 4 months ago. He introduced me to his friends who showed us around on both islands. In between, we stayed in Tulum, where we toured great ruins and discovered what would become my favorite cenote, Dos Ojos. He brought a young buck co-worker from Santa Barbara. We nicknamed him Mamba and had to pull him out of a tight spot he had gotten himself into while hustling for some cocaine on Caye Caulker. They gotta know. They returned north, back to Cancun, and I continued south. First, there were a few nights in Hopkins at Palmetto Grove, part cultural center, part eco-fishing lodge centered around the past, present, and culture of the Garifuna people, a mix of African slave descendants, indigenous inhabitants of and around the Caribbean island of St. Vincent, and their indigenous conquerors who had arrived from mainland Central America. Pockets of their 600,000 people could also be found in St. Vincent, the Grenadines, Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, and the United States. I rattled down dirt roads on a rented bicycle, past small, sad shacks and simple stores and cafes. A bit out of town was a charming little library opposite a huge open field half filled with cars and trucks and tents and people. As my life would have it, on that exact day I was there, at the precise time I passed by, I had stumbled upon the 13th annual Hopkins Kite Festival. It seems that the more one puts themselves out there, the better chances of good timing. There were parents and children and dogs and food and drink. There was chatter, laughter, concentrating faces and giggles and shrieks of children. Community folks sat at long tables, sharing what I assumed to be the most recent Hopkins gossip. I shot videos and stills of this most beautiful event. The Hummingbird Highway stretches just 86 kilometers, 54 miles from the Western Highway near the capital of Belmopan to the Southern Highway, continuing on to the coast at Dangriga. It is just as lovely as it sounds, and one of the very few roads on which I did backtrack. I spent a few nights camped in the parking lot of a hotel in Plasencia. In exchange for a rather expensive meal, I was allowed to park and have my run of the outdoor area, pool, shower, patio, and chairs. Plasencia was much more upscale than Hopkins. They shared some of the same shacks, but there were also nice homes, businesses, etc. There were more people and a more visible divide between rich and poor. I wandered about, was stopped in my tracks by a jazz man's ramped-down version of Hey Joe, and caught up on writing and went with the special of the day, meatloaf. At the Pickled Parrot, the highlight of Plasencia were the nights at the ocean's edge, beholding the waves and the sand lit up by the moon. I headed back on the Hummingbird Highway, which led me to my second, San Ignacio, and Mark. Mark was an inspired, outspoken lunatic / angel / prophet / troublemaker from Quebec, Canada. We met next to a bridge where overlanders sometimes camped. He was the exact thing I needed at a time I didn't realize I needed anything at all. He was at the end of what was a usual gig for him, buying a car in the southwestern U.S., driving to Mexico or Belize, then selling it off to pay for the trip. He said it helped with his periodic depression and had much good advice on routes, places, and practices. He told me the tale of a man who had appeared on a road in Mexico, claiming he had been waiting for him. Mark swore that he had already encountered that same man thousands of miles prior. He told of guns being pulled on him in Guatemala and how he was good either way, as he had lived a blessed full life. We walked into San Ignacio together. He chided a man for being from South Africa and told his girlfriend from London that he hated the place. Minutes later, as a dreadlock panhandler, might be him, approached us on the street, Mark opened his arms and bellowed, "Are you God?" Both interactions somehow ended with smiles and laughter. Boisterous and blustery, there was no keeping a low profile around this cat. And yet he possessed a sort of force field of playfulness, goodness, and humanity. One got the sense that he was immune from harm. He was a strange hero, a man who had long since detached himself from societal norms and the expectations and perceptions of others. I had come far on this front, but still had a ways to go. People like him help. I recorded our conversation during a short drive we took to the border of Guatemala and back. And just like that, he was gone. Our paths joined for less than 18 hours. If I didn't have photographs and recordings of our time together, I might wonder if it had been real at all. 3 months later, I uploaded a video of my first 6 months on the road. The video slowly dissolves from white into a faint recollection of Mexico 1, whereupon these words are spoken by Mark. "This road here is never ending. You'll find that out as you travel. You're always on a road. And you're wondering, does the road ever stop? Of course not. It keeps going round and round, because then it leads to a harbor, and then you put the car on the ship, and then that road and to another road, and it's never ending. I think life is like that. It's never ending. We just become something else, whatever that is."
You know, this road here is never ending. You'll find that out as you travel. You're always on a road. You're going down. And you're wondering, does the road ever stop? Of course not. It keeps going round and round and round. Because then it leads to a harbor, and then you put the boat, you put the car on the ship, and then that road to another road and another road, and it's never ending, like Disneyland's never-ending story.
Right.
So I think life is like that. It's never ending. We just become something else, whatever that is.
It's got
some roads were better than others. And I don't know, when I made these videos, I did take other videos, but I had a GoPro mounted on the windshield. I didn't get every second of every mile, whatever. But I got just about every segment that I went through. A couple seconds here, a couple seconds there. And this book really, the main character in this whole thing is that road. And it was so, I write about the beauty of seeing the earth in that context, that unbroken, like, straight line here to where it stops. It's really cool. And it was like this constant, this meditation of like, I mean, so much happened, and it was as much of a character as anything. And these kind of happened when I stopped. I could kind of stop and kind of dive in, and then it was back in the van, man, and just go. So aside from giving what Project 1000 promotes, encourages, is giving context to pictures and considering what's outside the frame. Not only this picture here, and we could talk about the history here, but something might literally be happening over here or over there. What is not? What's the story that's not in the picture? I mean, if a picture's worth 1,000 words, let's do it. This is where I stayed for 30 days in Nicaragua. Los Apartamentos Sofia, in case anybody's interested. I've got their contact information. $400 a month, something like that. It was lovely, Granada, warm, but it was this old colonial place. Stayed there. So yeah, again, stories that pictures don't tell. There's plenty of them. One of the biggest surprises of the trip that I write about is Colombia, which has a thing that in Spanish they call mala fama. Mala fama is disrepute. They have this nasty notoriety, because of, Pablo Escobar and the drug cartels in Cali and Medellin. And they're I'm sure they've been supplanted by new organizations or stuff, but they really come a long ways and not being ruled by drugs and kingpins. And it was beautiful. I kind of had that in my head, like, oh man. But I had already been through El Salvador and Honduras and some statistically dangerous places, which I write about in the book too. Is like I didn't research much, and it was kind of a psychological experiment when I told people I'm going to be driving, I'm going to do this, and they said, "What? You're going to go through Mexico? You're going to look at all the brown people?" And especially at the time, considering I left in 2016, December 2016, there was a good chunk of the country that had definite ideas about that. And I had different ideas, and I was glad to be leaving a country that thought like that. I was lucky enough to go to the big baller move of the trip is when I had it all scheduled out, and I was going to be in Quito, a couple hundred miles down the road when U2 played their first concert in Bogota. And I was like, no, can't do it. And in retrospect, I'm like, I should have just lingered for a while so I could have stayed. So I parked the car, spent the night at the airport in Quito. Lovely. A little noisy with alarms and stuff. But then I flew to Quito and met some friends there. And they played the entirety of the Joshua Tree album, which I dedicate a story to. But again, pictures outside the frame. Okay, outside this frame, there's a lunatic from, there's Trevor, my gigantic friend from junior high. Trevor's there. He's a mountain. He's got to be 350 pounds. Juan Felipe Echeverri was there. And then there was a lunatic named Steve from Boone, North Carolina. And if you think about, his name Steve kind of throws it off, but if you close your eyes and I say, he's from Boone, North Carolina. And this guy was kind of Boone. He was Booney. So I termed him, I just stopped calling him Steve and I called him Boone. Anyway, that's outside the frame, for example. And that takes me down to, that was in Colombia. Flew back to Bogota, continue on through northern part of Peru. Peru was the most varied landscape, beautiful. It's got Amazon rainforest, Amazon River, obviously. Huge mountains, 25,000 foot mountains in the Andes. Deserts, thousands of miles of deserts north and south of Lima, which is on the coast. And this was the second video at 1 year. And this kind of splits Peru in half. And it's a bit later.
mile. All the lights seem to flash and pass you by. So, how's it gonna be when it all comes down to cycling trivialities?
So that brought me to the middle of Peru. At about 25,000 feet after that was rising up to the Punta Olímpica, which was named because I think Peru beat Austria in like the 1932 Olympics. I forget which one it's written in there. All right. So anyway, this was so Peru took their football, real football, soccer, seriously. And this one's called 35 años, 35 years. Peru was the most variously beautiful country of my road trip. Within its borders are the Andes Mountains, the Amazon River, rainforest, high plains, and vast deserts. I would crisscross the country by land and by air, tripling the mileage of an unthinkable shortest route through the country. It began with yet another English lesson, this time from a customs agent who wanted to know the difference between fill up a bucket and fill out a form. Good question. Good student. Good stuff. A local man struck up a conversation in lowland Piura's Plaza de Armas in my first night in country. We talked about the state of the U.S., Peru, the losses and slow recovery from rains and subsequent flooding earlier that year. I made my way to Chachapoyas, 1.5 miles high, from where I took a bus to a gondola to the nearby Inca village of Cuelap, and another bus to the trailhead to the Gocta waterfall. Then it was back down to the ocean for a few nights at Huanchaco. Pizza had been in my head for days, and I found a place a few blocks away that exceeded expectations. Gustavo invited me back for the Peru versus New Zealand World Cup qualifier late Friday night. The next morning, Amelia informed me that she and Victor, my camping hosts, were headed to Lima that night. She said the place was mine, and to charge 15 soles, about $4.60, for campers or 30 soles for a room. The next day, I caught up on my writing and washed and hung clothes between two balconies. Amelia didn't leave any food or instructions for the cat hanging around, so I shared some of my pasta with her. I returned to the pizza place to watch the World Cup qualifier. They couldn't get the TV to work in the restaurant, so we retreated to the living quarters inside, where 8 of us crowded into a small bedroom for the 90-minute scoreless match. This meant New Zealand would be traveling to Lima for the rubber match on Wednesday. It would be a big one. Peru hadn't qualified for the World Cup in 35 years. I headed back inland and made it as far as an overlander spot outside of Carras around 5 p.m., then returned in the dark to town for some groceries. The guy who ran the place told me about Chacas, a 3 to 5 hour detour off the road to Huaraz. I headed out early the next morning and was greeted by spectacular snow-capped mountains. The road began climbing just east of Carhuaz, followed by a serpentine highway and hairpin turns for miles. I pulled over 5 or 10 times on the way up, each time thinking the view couldn't get better, only to be gratefully proven wrong each time. Near the top was Punta Olímpica, Olympic Point, marking a mile-long tunnel, the highest in the world at 15,535 feet. Its location was scouted and decided by young Peruvians shortly after and named in honor of their country's 4-2 soccer victory over Austria in the 1936 Olympics in Berlin. The light at the end of the tunnel grew larger and brighter, and I was soon out of the mountains, headed down the other side for a delicious descent into a lush valley. I parked across from the Plaza de Armas in Chacas, rested in an open field, wandered a bit around the small, quiet town. After a bit of lunch, I was glad to retrace my route and continue on to Huaraz, where I spent a few days wandering, writing, and waiting for the match. A few business-type men were working on a bottle in front of the TV in the lobby, watching the pre-match show. Shortly after we started chatting, the guys invited me to join them for the match. Soon thereafter, I was piling into a cab with 4 strangers. It turned out the hotel owner was the president of the Huaraz Chamber of Commerce, and that the viewing party was in their office on the 2nd floor adjacent the main square of town. I had wandered by there 5 hours earlier as people were already starting to gather to watch the match on the big screen outdoors. There were a few rows of tables and chairs and a modest offering of food and beverages. We claimed our spot in the front row, and I spent the next 2 hours watching history. I watched players mouth their national anthem on the screen and heard the people in the plaza sing. 28 minutes of near misses, gasps, and groans later, Christian Cueva passed to the center of the box where Jefferson Farfan right-footed the ball into the top left corner of the net. There was mayhem in and outside the room. Peru led 1-0 at half, but no one in the room was in celebration mode. 20 minutes into the second half, just after a corner kick, Cristian Ramos right-footed the ball high into the center of the net. It wasn't until about the final 30 seconds of the match that a confident rumble began to fill the room, and soon enough, Peru had indeed qualified for their first World Cup in 35 years. When the final whistle blew, the room in Peru entire shook. I leapt to my feet and cheered with my new friends, then hurried outside into a sea of painted faces, people shouting, cheering, arms raised and around each other. Peruvian flags waved, car horns honked, fireworks exploded. It was a country mad with joy. After a bit, the fellows decided to go for a drink and a smoke down the block. We cheered our way to a corner liquor store where they ordered rum and cokes. A drunken young man stumbled up to me and screamed, "Let's go dance." He had the perfect answer as I questioned, "Where?" "It doesn't matter." The next day was a national holiday. So what's outside the frame, right? I mean, stories, pictures don't tell. And if a picture's 1,000 words, then let's do that. All right, changing gears a bit to the website. This is the main page, project1-1000.com. So the first thing worth noting is, the recent submissions. The last 5 will show up. You want to go back? The last 5 will show up on there in the center, and then be replaced by the next 5, right? On every page is the navigation bar. So this black top should be at the top of each page. There's a navigation bar here, which you can find out all these pages, right? So the main will show you the submissions main, submissions AV, which is my. You can submit a submissions, a picture in 1,000 words. I also encourage writers to record themselves reading it. They send me that audio recording, and I plug it into a video that I've created. That's just kind of a template for the site. And these are all uploaded to YouTube, and they're also available on that submissions AV. Collections, we'll get to later. The second main submenu is resources, where you can find publications. Now there's something on there, because I wrote something. So publications, there'll be more there, hopefully. Resources for education, social justice groups, sessions, events that are coming up, videos. About has a couple things, the FAQ, philosophy and secrets on the site, the history of where this came from, the team. It's a very small team right now. It's me. And so you can join the team, or you can help us. You can find ways to help us, the royal us. All right, and then there's access. This is how you log in, sign up, or reset your password right there. That should be on every page. If you think about pictures and all the pictures that you have, where do these come from? These could be pictures on the wall, frame pictures that you have. How many pictures do you have on your phone? Hundreds, thousands of pictures that I dare say need stories and are worth saving. Albums, photo albums. I keep on urging my mother to write stories, write 1,000 words. I mean, keeps her active. She shares history, all these stories that I would love to know about. Or take pictures of stuff around the house, whatever. Write 1,000 words about that. So the questions are in the picture: who were you with? Who were you before? Who were you after? And what did you see and hear? What did you taste and smell? What did you touch or feel? What happened before? What happened after? When was this? Where were you? And why? Why were you there? Why did you take the picture? Why does it deserve a story? How were you changed? Why? Why'd you pick this one? Ask yourself what stories need to be told and heard and shared and saved. This is the main page for submissions. You'd get that by, let me do a little buzzaroo here. Is that a little dot? Yeah, cool. Main submissions page. So these are all the submissions, and there's some filters here if you want to search for a certain author here. You do it right. Oh God. All right, you put their name in there, or you can sort by publication date. There's other ways to filter this stuff, but these are usually. I think the default setting is the last one will come first. The most recent one is at top. So that's the extent of the submission so far. We could use some more. So obviously the first submission, if that's true, was The Boy in the Casbah, which I wrote a long time ago with this idea in mind. It was 1,000 words. It's about my father, when I lived in Spain, brought his goofy girlfriend over, and we rented a car and drove through Andalusia, and then took a ferry to Morocco. And that was, I thought this was the first kid that most immediately needed a story. He needed a picture. So I gave him one. The picture will begin, the submission image will appear at the beginning of the story and also at the end, just in case something might have changed as you read that. Because people will have an initial, like, oh, maybe. Your mind just goes there, and all of a sudden you read the story and it's like, wow, no idea what was outside the frame. This is at the footer of each submission. For instance, we're going to go to credible fear, which we'll get to where the origin of that came from. I just kind of want to look at the footers here. So these are the tags that are at the bottom. In this case, this thing was taken in Nogales in the state of Sonora in Mexico last fall. So anything that's got looks like a hyperlink is hyperlinked. So in this case, we're going to gather all the images of Nogales will be on one page. All the images of Sonora will be on one page. All the images of Mexico will be on one page. All the images of Montana are gathered. The next tags you have, each submission has tags, which are themes. Is this about, in this case, immigration, fear, cartel, crime, violence? Cheery story. It is beautiful. But all those things are gathered too. So this is the tags main, which is also, you can get to this from the main submenu drop down. So these are all the tags that are in stories, and how many submissions have that tag in them. So there's also a way, once you become a user, if you have a favorite tag, you want to tag the word Montana, save that as a favorite, and it will alert you. You can look back at that when someone wrote something about that tagged Montana. So there's a favorites button. The last thing at the bottom of a submission is the contributor, the person who wrote it. So that will obviously link to the contributor page. This is a user page that everyone gets, whether they're a contributor or a fan, which is almost a contributor, but they don't write, or a project administrator. And it kind of tells you all you need to know right here. The location here. You can, I really urge privacy, so you don't need to put exactly where you're from. You can leave out Billings, or you can leave out Montana, or leave out everything. You don't need to share your geography, but it will gather the users by those places. If you want to see other users in Billings, you would click on that. If you want to see other users in Montana, it gathers all those things. So this is my page. I've got two collections. A collection is a single author, which I call contributor, which can group their submissions together. So in this sense, there's a theme. I wrote 2 stories about 9/11 being in the Bronx, and then my experience in the at the refugee shelter in Nogales, which I'll get to. Between a rock and a hard place, I was able to put 4 together based on my experiences down in Mexico and Arizona last fall. Personal submissions, my favorites. Again, those favorites, like I just mentioned. If I want to see, it's kind of an interconnected site. So I want to see kind of what Amy. If I like Amy's writing, I'm going to go to her website, and check out her favorite things. Oh, I might like this person, or I might like this theme, or what about that? I can save these things. And the other thing at the bottom, after all the specific submission specific thing, are the related links. In this case, you could go to the submissions by Dave O. You could go to his page right here. You can link that. The next submission by Dave O is to the right. The previous is to the left. Or it's also available in that collection that I just talked about, Between a Rock and a Hard Place. And there's Credible Fear, as we listed. The collections can have tags too. So this collection, obviously the 9/11 one has that tag in it. All right, I think there's a magic of 1,000 words. I think it helps. Nothing has helped me more in the past 3 years, as my country has apparently decided to disintegrate, to redirect that energy into something beautiful and positive that I think I'm putting into the world. I'm telling you, I don't say that lightly, that I've been a little creative Unabomber in these little places where it's like, I can't deal with it, so I'm just going to put, despite what's going on, or because of what's going on, this world needs something where people get to connect and write and yeah. So I've redirected that energy. I think, processing the world and emotions and stuff, creation is the thing to me. I learned that a long time ago. Express oneself. I think we need to shine. It's a good practice of discipline. 1,000 words, there's a lot of people that aren't doing it. It may not sound like a bunch. It is literally a page and a half of paper, of written, even like double-spaced, I think. It's not that much. It's a good practice of discipline. And you discover the essential. 1,000 words sounds like a lot until you start getting into it, and you realize the sweet spot is when you have too much to say. And you get to use that editing technique. You get to kill your darlings and see what is really essential about this piece and this moment and this thing. And there's nothing to say that you can't write another 1,000 words on something similar. It's not like you're doing justice, which almost killed me with writing the book. You know what I mean? It's like, oh my God, I can't tell everything. You can write more. And then redirecting that energy, like I said. Groups are groups of contributors, which are authors, and their submissions, however that manifests. Most of these right now are education because that's where I started because of my background. But there's also room for community groups and social justice groups, and we'll get to that. But these have tags too. You can see all the groups in Billings and all the groups in Montana or all the groups in Illinois or whatever. We're going to start with my friend Jonna Mandeville, who was the kind enough to be the first guinea pig as an educator from Helena Middle School. And she brought on 18 students last year. And she kind of did this assignment in her class. She kind of did a 1-1000 in her class and then brought them online. So this wasn't necessarily a session. But that was fun working through this with her. It was something. So anyway, so in this case, the group, Jonna Mandeville has a parent group called 2021. 2021. So this is her school year, and she just had one assignment. But it's made so you can do different groupings, whether it be by school year or by class or whatever, and then you can have subgroups of that. In this case, her class was the main group is 2021. And then she just did one assignment, which is Project 1000 number 1. And she brought 18 kids online, and they wrote 15 submissions. One girl even wrote 2. So I was pretty impressed that the first people to do this were middle school students, and they were able to do it. I thought I'd include the final. Where are we at here? Oh, we're reasonable. It's not bad. We're almost there. I almost didn't include this, but I thought I would just because why wouldn't I include the last piece, right?
I hope heaven and hell wasted life, why wouldn't you waste it? And the ocean breeze salty, won't you carry it in your head, in your mouth, in your soul? And the more we move ahead, the more we're stuck in rewind. Well, I don't mind, how could I mind? Well, that is that, and this is this. You tell me what you want, I'll tell you what you get away from me. Well, that is that, and this is this. You tell me what you saw, I'll tell you what you missed when the ocean met the sky. You missed when time and life shook hands and said goodbye. When the earth folded on itself and said good luck. I hope heaven and hell are really there. I wouldn't hold my breath. You wasted life, why wouldn't you waste it? You wasted life, why wouldn't you waste it? You wasted life, why wouldn't you waste it? You wasted life, why wouldn't you waste it?
Sunday morning, I'm waking up. Can't even focus on a coffee cup. Don't even know whose bed I'm in. Where do I start? Where do I begin? Sunday morning, I'm waking up. Can't even focus on a coffee cup. Don't even know whose bed I'm in. Where do I start? Where do I begin? 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 Sunday morning, I'm waking up. Can't even focus on a coffee cup. Don't even know whose bed I'm in. Where do I start? Where do I begin?
So yeah, so I did that one at 16 months when I was done, and this is the output from other. Here we are. In the resources section, we talked about education. This website is good for, like I said, my friend Jonna, Helen Middle School, used this as a website, as tool thing that teachers can use and gather their students in their writings. But our outreach program is called Project 1000 Sessions, which does reach out into the schools, social justice group, community groups, and offers structured, mentored, affirming writing accountability groups. There's pages on here that talk about sessions. There's a way to get a quote here. If you want to figure out how many weeks, how many submissions, how many people, anything else you want additional, there's session optional here in the middle, especially for teachers and stuff that might work. This is not a replacement for English class. It's more, if you can tell, I'm not so interested in grammar and all the words. I want to get people to express themselves and to tell their stories. So it's really kind of providing that atmosphere. This is like an extracurricular thing after school, something like that. So, but if teachers wanted, or a school or district wanted to record attendance or updates, see notes, they could have a login page to look at that stuff and say, hey, we did this today. In this meeting we did this, and this next week we did this, and they uploaded this stuff, and they could have a record of what happened. So there's a way to get a quote, contact info, session grading, pretty much 90, 80, 70, 60. It's really easy. Did you do all the submissions that you were asked? I don't grade them. I don't, again, it kind of all flows through the same thing, right? I'm not going to critique you. Did you do the assignment? Did you do it on time? Did you attend the meetings? And did you participate? And 5% is participation. 60% is did you do the submission? The other 35% is attendance. So again, these are the things that are included with sessions. Session design coordination with the client, introduction, overview, process, and practice, exercises, assignments, and writing prompts, accountability, process, methods, and casual critique, assistance with participant account creation on the website here, assistance with submission creation, draft. There's a counter on the website. There's how to tag stuff, how to make it all look pretty on the website. Sessions would do that instead of overloading a teacher. This was the wrong time to try to approach them the past couple of years, so this is like the time I could get out and do it. So yeah, I really want to start doing sessions around attachment of submissions to the project. So you got to create the project, and then you attach the submission to the project. The creation, promotion, hosting a final presentation, something like this, without all the talky talks, but just people reading their 1,000 words and their pictures there next. I think that'd be really cool. You can make that really cool. Optional, again, for the education setting, those things I talked about. Target communities, underserved, underprivileged communities. I'd love to get into the Indian schools, the tribal schools, and I could do, especially virtually, I could probably cover a huge swath, if not all of Montana, pretty quick, and just get them all signed up, whether it's 8 weeks, 6 weeks, or whatever, or an ongoing thing. Alternative schools, one of my best experiences doing a theater project that Sam and Joe can speak to about a theater project that we did. I did the same thing at a school for the bad kids in Billings, and it was one of the greatest experiences. I public school taught in Chicago. Come on, bad kids. Behavioral institutions would be great. I did art therapy. I was art therapy director at Rimrock Foundation for a couple years. I did a lot of movement technique. Correctional facilities. I think this would be really cool to do in a correctional facility, to get them to write 1,000 words. So yeah, there's a place on Sessions Online where you can download the latest session packet. This is a group. Most of them were education. This is a community group. It says what kind of group it is right here. A community group in this sense was in Sonora, Mexico. It's called the Casa de Misericordia. The Mercy House is the translation. You learn more about this, but I wrote 3 submissions on my experience there. Again, it's usually the most recent one is listed first, and that's true here. It was credible fear, which is the first test of applying for asylum to the U.S. is that you have a credible fear of returning to your homeland for safety. And this was, I did the first session, ended up taking place at this refugee shelter in Sonora, Mexico, in Nogales, where I went down there and helped with their website and helped out with some student stuff. And the teacher was gone for a couple of days, so I had 3 days with these kids. And I got them to write 1,000 words. And it was all in Spanish. It was just awesome. It's like, I can't quite plan that. I did not see that coming. But that's my life. So I thought I'd throw this one in there too. We're almost done.
Tierra de colores,
que guardas el llanto del pasado, el eco del aire, bendecida por los dioses, con heridas en las manos, aún sigues anhelando, soñando libertad. Ay, cómo no voy a quererte si tu tierra de colores pintas mi realidad. Ay, aunque todo esté cambiando, la luna no ha dejado de brillar. Dime, tierra de colores, estamos
Buenas noches. Y mi título es Un día lleno de colores y esperanza. Fue un día cualquiera. Me encontraba sentada platicando con mi padre, un hombre gentil, agradable y tranquilo. Para mí, el mejor papá del mundo. Le propuse jugar básquetbol, solo los dos, un momento padre e hija. Me divertí mucho jugando y riendo de no poder encestar, que al último terminé muy cansada. Nos encontrábamos riendo y descansando cuando de pronto miré el cielo y me di cuenta que tras las nubes comenzaban a brotar unos colores rosas, morados y naranjas. Seguí jugando con mi papá y después de un rato más el cielo comenzaba a verse más y más precioso, y conforme el sol iba bajando salían más colores de entre las nubes, amarillos y rojos, muy brillantes por cierto. En ese momento comencé a tomar fotos y a disfrutar de ese bello atardecer, mirando sus colores y formas. Las grandes nubes llenas de color, vivas y fascinantes desde mi vista. Tomé más fotos, grabé y sonreí. Al ver ese espectáculo tan fenomenal para mí, vivo de esperanza y de pensamientos en los que se encuentra al pensar que el cielo siente, que a veces puede estar triste, gris y nublado, y otras veces lleno de vida, alegre y brillante. Eso me hace pensar que no somos tan diferentes y que está bien estar mal, siempre y cuando vuelvamos a brillar y resplandecer a nuestra máxima capacidad. Pasaron 10 minutos, comenzaba a hacer frío, el viento soplaba, hacía volar mi cabello, brotaba por todo mi cuerpo y me causaba escalofríos. El sol cada vez se veía menos y fue entonces cuando pude capturar esa foto, donde el cielo se veía más vivo que nunca. A su alrededor se alcanzaban a ver pinos y aún más lejos aparecían las montañas, tan pequeñas a lo lejos que podía taparlas con mi dedo pulgar. Y en lo más cerca se podía ver una casa que está en lo más alto y se pueden ver sus colores, al parecer blanco y negro. Pero también se ve esa malla que nos divide de las demás casas y nos protege del peligro que hay fuera de la casa de la misericordia. Me encuentro en Nogales, Sonora, un lugar desconocido para mí. A lo largo de mi viaje y en mi espera por poder pasar a Estados Unidos, he conocido personas que han sido muy buenas conmigo y mi familia, pero también he conocido gente muy mala y cruel que me hace pensar en lo lejos que estamos los seres humanos de hacer al mundo algo mejor. Aún así, me encuentro agradecida por estar bien, por estar con mis padres, estar aquí en la casa de la misericordia, por haber conocido personas muy buenas que me han enseñado a valorar las cosas pequeñas que me da la vida y a ser amable a pesar de que la estemos pasando mal. A lo largo de mi trayecto por llegar aquí, he visto muchos cielos, algunos grises, algunos nublados y demasiado negros, y también soleados. Tanto yo como mi familia veníamos demasiado tristes por haber dejado todo lo que amábamos. Venía en el autobús mirando a mi alrededor, viendo cosas y paisajes diferentes, mirando el cielo y dándome cuenta de que cada vez me encontraba más lejos de mi hogar, dejando a una de las personas más especiales en mi vida. Sin saber cuándo volvería a verla. Dejé también a mi gato, el pequeño Ramiro, gris y peludo, pero sé que está bien allá donde se quedó. Sin duda creo que cada uno de los que estamos aquí dejamos cosas muy importantes para nosotros, cosas que al dejarlas nos causó un vacío enorme, y con las esperanzas de algún día poder volver a verlas o a verlos. Para cada uno, el trayecto hacia acá no ha sido fácil, o incluso para algunos ha sido más complicado que para otros. Y me entristece saber por cuántas cosas malas pasaron, pero también me enorgullece que a pesar de todo lo que tuvieron que pasar, sigan aquí, con días buenos y días malos, pero con esa fe y esa esperanza de algún día poder pasar. Cada uno tiene una historia que contar, cada uno es consciente de todo lo que tuvo que pasar y lo valiente que es. Solo tengo una cosa que decirles, y es que no se rindan, porque al que persiste y resiste, buenas cosas le pasan, y cada uno recibe lo que merece y lo que da. Porque de un cielo gris y nublado siempre estará ese cielo lleno de colores y esperanza. Tal vez muchos crean que mi historia no tiene nada que ver con mi fotografía, pero yo sigo pensando que el cielo es muy parecido a nosotros y a veces nos refleja cómo nos sentimos. Nos refleja que Él también puede estar triste, pero también feliz. Y me pone a pensar que a veces está bien estar mal, siempre y cuando vuelvamos a brillar y estar bien como aquel cielo lleno de vida y color. Por último, puedo decir que mi estancia aquí ha sido de tristezas y alegrías, de esperanza, pero también de desilusión, de días buenos, pero también de días muy malos, y de poder encontrarme a mí misma, de conocerme más, de amarme tal y como soy, pero sobre todo de aprender que para llegar a todo lo bueno, primero tenemos que pasar por todo lo malo. El cielo es y será una esperanza para mí, del saber que a pesar de que todo esté mal, el sol siempre volverá a salir tras todas esas nubes y esas montañas, y siempre habrá un nuevo día para volver a intentarlo, para hacer las cosas mejor, para mejorar como persona, como ser humano, como hijo, amigo, alumno, etc. Siempre habrá un nuevo día hasta el final de nuestra vida, en el que solo nos quedará recordar todos esos momentos buenos y malos, todos esos cielos grises y coloridos que algún día vimos y vivimos. Antes de terminar, puedo decir que elegí esta fotografía porque el cielo para mí significa mucho. Cuando estoy jugando fútbol o estoy leyendo uno de mis libros favoritos, miro el cielo, el sol y el aire brotan sobre mi cara. Respiro hondo y puedo decir que dos de mis grandes sueños están ahí: el ser futbolista y el ser escritora. Y algún día volveré a mirar ese cielo pintoresco, brillante, lleno de vida, y eso será tal vez siendo escritora o futbolista profesional. Y ese día que mire el cielo, sabré que por todo lo que estoy pasando ahora habrá valido la pena.
Ay, tierra de colores, mira todo lo que guardas, el llanto del pasado, el eco del ayer, y no he olvidado, y nunca olvidaré esta lucha que hoy cargo por volver.
So that was the first session. That's it. This is the tour that I'm planning on doing. Hopefully, I can also reach people that will come that I don't know. Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. I know everybody else. All right. So anyway, the first leg is kind of cruising around Montana. I'm gonna shut her down for a little bit. And this might be one of the reasons. Is I want to give people a chance to chill out and have the first proper summer for a while, and kick it back up around the end of August. I have a reading starting to schedule stuff in Bozeman around August 28th, and then go from the fall into the fall after that. It seems better. Come back when school starts. So that's kind of the plan. The third leg. This graphic was written a couple months ago, before gas prices and everything prices. So we'll see. If you guys have any referrals as far as cool places to go, venues or people that you know in cities that could really help out, I will gladly take them. There's all sorts of QR codes around on little papers. 2 of them are the same. One's a little different. Or I'll just leave that up for you guys to be able to go right to that webpage. I'll take any questions, or else, how did I do? A little bit over. All right. So, are there any questions or anything? We can talk afterward too. But thank you. Thanks for coming. That's all. Yeah.